Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we now have official word from Sony talking about this entire matter here with a statement which doesn't tell us a whole lot of new information, but it does definitely seem to indicate that they were pretty big fans of Kevin Feige with some of the things that he did, with some of the help that he did for a lot of their movies, including even Venom. They've revealed he helped with in an uncredited role, even though he was not listed as a producer. Apparently, he had a lot of input that helped that movie be successful, which really just goes to show once again why I think that Sony might end up being the company that loses out the most on this deal not going through, because I don't think they realize just how much Disney had to do with their Spider-Man films being as successful as they were, especially the most recent film that made over $1 billion. Now, I definitely do respect their decision to say, screw you, Disney, because 50-50 is way too much, especially when you already get so much money from all of the marketing and from all of the merchandising that you already have the rights still to with Spider-Man and all the other characters. But at the end of the day, I think that, I think both sides have a side. I think both sides have definitely a fair point. But I think that in the end, Sony might be the ones that end up getting the most hurt by this. I know that some people would like to see that, Sony gets very successful and has a successful Spider-Verse that is able to compete with the MCU. I mean, as cool as that would be, we also have to live in the real world, and we have to look at what they've done when Sony has been on their own. And what they've done is, at least recently, is Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, which I think all of us can at least agree are at least meh films at best. 2 is just downright awful. That's the reason why there's a reason why that film is in bargain bins everywhere nowadays. And then Venom, I think, is definitely a 50-50 split film too, where some people love it versus some people hating it. And I think that that is something that we need to have. Anyway, Spider-Man Studio Sony goes public with Marvel movie divorce. We are disappointed, they said. This coming in from The Hollywood Reporter. The studio is placing the blame on Disney for cutting short the interior studio cooperation. So notice how they're shifting the blame here. Sony Pictures is vowing to carry on the Spider-Man franchise without Marvel Studios' involvement, placing the blame on Disney for cutting the successful inter-studio cooperation short. In a statement obtained exclusively by The Hollywood Reporter, now of course everyone has it, the studio says it is disappointed that Marvel president Kevin Feige will no longer act as lead producer on the film franchise, squarely laying the decision at Disney's feet. Much of today's news about Spider-Man has mischaracterized recent discussions about Kevin Feige's involvement in the franchise, says a Sony spokesperson. We are disappointed, but respect Disney's decision not to have him continue as a lead producer of our next live-action Spider-Man film. Isn't it interesting that these giant companies like to word it in that way? Instead of them saying, we think that we're disappointed that Disney wants to ask too much money from us. They can't say that. Instead, it's got to be, we're disappointed that, Kevin Feige will not be the lead producer anymore. When in reality, it's we want the money, Disney wants the money, and none of us want to give up any ground because we're both greedy corporations that care more about money than they do about creating good products. And I think that there is a balance that can be found there, right? I think there's a balance that can be struck where you know that a good film will make profit, will make money in a capitalist system, but also that you're telling a good story. Now I just feel like so many of these studios, so many of these giant companies just care so much more about their bottom line that they will sacrifice good storytelling. They will, as we've seen happen before, meddle in the productions of these movies all so that they can try and somehow, even though it usually ends up screwing them over more so than anything else, all so that they can somehow protect their investments. They can protect their money more so than actually trying to let a director or let a creator make a good product. It's just fascinating to me. That's why I think you got bad guys on both sides of this, even though I'm much more critical of Disney because they own pretty much everything and they've cornered the market. And as I said, I think there's a lot of fishy stuff going on in their financials as far as what they do overseas with how just they've cornered the market there. I think that has less to do with competition and more with them making deals with governments and countries. And I think that's definitely something that's a little bit more sketchy than what they do here in the States. But with that being said, both of these corporations, I think, definitely have some blame to share here, and also, too, I think, are sketchy. The studio then says, Feige, who shepherds the robust Marvel Cinematic Universe for Disney-owned Marvel, may just have too much on his plate given that Disney recently acquired additional Marvel characters via its acquisition of 21st Century Fox, which sounds to me like Sony's trying to give them an excuse and an out. If this is how you're going to play hardball, I don't really see how this is going to work out well for you. He said, we hope this might change in the future, but understand that the many new responsibilities that Disney has given him, including all of their newly added Marvel properties, do not allow time for him to work on an IP they do not own. I think that was almost like a subtle jab at them saying, hey, just a reminder, you don't own this IP and you never will. And, basically take it out of our cold, dead fingers. Well, if you say that to Disney, they will try and put you out of business. I just know it. Kevin is terrific, and we are grateful for his help and guidance and appreciate the path he has helped put us on, which we will continue. So basically trying to say Kevin Feige is not the problem. Kevin Feige is a good person, is someone that they think has creatively helped them out. But that also kind of makes you worry, because remember that under Kevin Feige, or at least under the Kevin Feige reign of the MCU, the future of Spider-Man kind of looked woke. It kind of looked like they were going in certain directions with certain characters, and it very well could be the case that if that is the path that they have been set on and they continue that path, what will it indeed look like? Will they try and continue to go in that woke path, or will they try and go in a different direction with it? I think, as I said before, it's going to be so much more difficult for them to continue the story, seeing that this character, Spider-Man, has been set up not just to be a leader in the Avengers, but to be the freaking heart of the Avengers. I said this in the live stream last night. When it comes down to it, Iron Man was not just a leader, he was also the heart of the team. He was the one that so many people were able to not only just connect with, but empathize with, right? I mean, seriously, it's mostly because not just of the character, but also because the actor, right? Robert Downey Jr. is such a talented actor that you were able to feel it. Like, that's why people were so hurt. People were so upset when his character was the one that got taken out in Endgame, because he was, again, the heart of the team. He was that glue holding it all together. And that's why the future of the MCU looks so bleak without him, because who is going to be that next person? And it looked like, to me, Marvel and Sony were coming together to say Spider-Man is going to be that glue. Spider-Man, all pun intended, Spider-Man is going to be the next heart of the MCU. But without him, who in the hell could it be? I mean, seriously, like, if they're honestly going to go forward and say, oh, Captain Marvel's going to be the new head, okay, you could say that she's the most powerful. You can try and argue that till you're blue in the face and say, oh, she's more powerful than Thor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. BS, BS, BS. But she will never, ever be the heart of the team. And the reason why is because she does not have a compelling backstory. Seriously, do you empathize with her character at all? Oh my gosh, she was a successful pilot. Good for her. Oh, then she got mixed up with Kree blood, and now she's superpowered. Oh my gosh. Oh, are we supposed to empathize because her powers were held back by the patriarchy? Oh no, that's just awful. No, of course not. No one can empathize with her character because that character was not meant to be taken in that way, right? It was more of a symbolic character in my mind that was trying to represent something more so than the film, which is one of the many reasons why I dislike the film and why it's still on the floor back there, because one of my subscribers sent me a Blu-ray just so that on live stream I could toss it over my shoulder and treat it the way that it should be treated, because it's just not a good movie. But even if you think it's a good movie, even if you will defend the character, I think that we can all come into an agreement that she is not ever going to be the heart of the team. Not nearly as much as a Peter Parker could be, who has lost now a father figure in his life 3 separate occasions, who is being played by Tom Holland in a way, and again, we can talk about how the character is written, but I think all of us can agree that Tom Holland's characterization and acting portrayal is pretty damn good, and is able for us, I mean, seriously, how many of us during Infinity War, when he was fading away, and he says, I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark, didn't feel something? And it was not just because of Robert Downey Jr. It was because both of them together were bouncing off each other so much that you bought that relationship that had been established over just a very small period of time, And it just was amazing. And I think that that's something that both of these companies are going to have to start to come together with, saying, hey, if we want our future to be really held together, we need Spider-Man, says Marvel. But Sony also needs to say, hey, we need the influence of Disney. We need the push of Disney in order to get these films to that billion-dollar mark. Because go ahead and look to all the films that came out this year by Disney. All but one of them, big budget-wise, all but one of them made $1 billion. No other film by any company was even close to that number. The closest number domestically, as far as worldwide releases, there's one movie that came out in China, Wandering Earth, which I just don't count because obviously China is a juggernaut. But the only other film that even did any money was How to Train Your Dragon 3, which made little over $500 million. Meaning that Disney made $500 million over every other film minimum. That's not competition. That's complete ownership. And Sony's going to have to realize that. Sony's going to have to play ball. Sony's going to have to do something. Because either they play ball and give Disney something and Disney accepts something, or Marvel falls apart in some capacity because they've lost their heart. Unless they're able to replace it somehow. I just don't really see how they'll be able to do so with any of the other characters to any great degree, especially since, as Gary over at Nerdrotic talks about all the time, Spider-Man is like the most popular comic character right now. But then also, too, with Sony, are they going to be able to honestly say that they can tell a story in a good capacity that's not going to end up like Amazing Spider-Man 2? The only thing in my mind that they could do is a Spider-Verse. Could you imagine if they brought Sam Raimi as a director and said, Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland, and we're going to have even Andrew Garfield come back. And they're all going to be in the same movie as Spider-Man, and we're going to do a live-action Spider-Verse. And then you can even introduce characters like Miles Morales, Imagine how well that film could do. Now, of course, people in Hollywood would say, oh, it's Miles Morales that's doing it. When honestly, all of us would know, no, it's Sam Raimi coming back to do a film that he should have been able to do a long time ago, but unfortunately, because of studio interference, had one of the worst films in Spider-Man 3. But of course, we know that wasn't entirely his fault. It was partially his fault, but not entirely his fault. But either way, both companies need to figure out what the hell's going on because they both need this relationship. Marvel needs Spider-Man in a certain capacity, and Sony has not proven itself to be reliable. Yes, we can say that Venom got close to the $1 billion mark, but even that film only made around $800 million, which is more than people thought it was going to make. But do they have the creative juices? Do they have the creative flow to be able to continue to build that universe on their own? I have my doubts. But what are your thoughts? What say you on this? Do you think that this is going to hurt Sony or Marvel more? And what are your thoughts here about Sony's response here? I think that Sony is definitely playing, a slightly hardball. I mean, I think they're giving Disney a little too much credit, at least giving Kevin Feige way too much credit. Obviously, they like him a lot, and that's being very apparent here. But also, they are saying, hey, we own this property. Obviously, they don't care as much because it's not their IP, as they said. And I think that's something worth talking about. And also, there's the fact that there's petitions now going on saying, keep Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. Okay, petitions aren't going to change that, right? Because all these companies care about is money. And until Disney can offer a smaller chunk of the pie saying, oh, we only want this much, because they were asking for a 50-50 split. Right now, they only get 5%. So that's pennies on the dollar in comparison to what they're asking for. But I'm sure there's a common ground, and I really do honestly believe that they will come back together because Sony, I honestly believe, needs Marvel, needs those characters, needs that connection in order to be able to continue to build this universe, including their own Spider-Verse if they want to. And Marvel obviously needs Spider-Man because he was going to be set up and was set up to be not only a leader in the Avengers, but also the heart as well. And they don't really have anyone else to replace it. Let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comments below. Like this video, smash that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.